So in this lesson, we're finalizing our AJAX input form. So applying some styling to it and also just additional functionality. So this is the form that we have so far, and it's going to have the error messages here. So name needs to be more than 5. I'll just do a quick refresh. Not a valid email address. So adding in, make sure it's a valid email address, and now it'll write sending when sending the message and clear the form data. So when I go over to my email, there I've got the message that was just sent to me, and as well we're tracking it into our spreadsheet. So whatever data that we've got within the input field, that's coming into the spreadsheet. And then also you will also clear out your default values of the form content. So I just usually like to have them for testing. So once it's ready and once your application is ready, just clear out all of the form information and test it out a few times. Make sure that it's working as expected. So there's our name, hello world 2, hello world 3, and here's our user, hello world 2, and the message, hello world 3. So everything is working as expected, and we're returning back submitting the form contents within a JSON format, and as well we're picking it up from the server side and then returning that information right back. So we've got a main contact form here, and we can send content over to the server, and that gets emailed to our email account. So let's do a quick test, and you might want to test this through a few times just to make sure that everything is working as expected and that you're getting the emails in. If you're not getting the emails in, you can go to sent and check to see if the emails are being sent from the account. And then as well, you can also go into all emails. Sometimes they do get flagged as spam and then automatically removed to spam. So you want to make sure that the emails are actually coming in, and you can then finalize the application. So let's add some styling to the input fields. So for the input fields themselves, set it up as display and block, so they each get their own line of code, and set the width to 80%. And I'm actually going to apply for the main container. And this one I'm going to set to width of 80% and then center that main container. So we don't have to center each one of the fields itself. So set the margin to auto, so it automatically centers it. And the input field width, set it to whatever the 100% of the available space is. And this is also applied to text area. So we get both of them being applied there. Let's also add some margin between them. So top and bottom margin, and that one can just be regular. Font size 1.em, this makes it slightly larger. And then also for the main container, let's add a background. So add a slight background color to it. And also let's do some padding. And I'll also do a border radius, so that's slightly rounded. Save that. And I'm also going to do a border radius to the fields and just do a slight rounding of the fields. And also maybe a little bit of padding, so it's spaced slightly a little bit more. For the button itself, and that actually is going to be input type button, so let's select the button directly. So that's input type submit, and you can always do a square bracket in order to do the selection, and you could also use this within the query selector. So this is selecting the button. So maybe add a background color, and I'll do a black and white type scheme and set the color to be white. So there's our send message button, and when we hover over it, so do the pseudo class, and I usually like to set the opacity, so there's that hover type effect to the button. You could also update the background color as well. Let's add the cursor to pointer. And we should also, for the message area, so that's where we're getting any of the errors being output into the output area. So let's update the output area. So this is where all of our error messages will go. And let's do a background color of white. Add a bunch of padding to it, 25 pixels. And text align, so you can center align the text. Also do a border, and I'll do a solid black border, or maybe we'll do a solid red border. So there's our output field, and also let's by default we'll take output and apply the style of display and set that to none, and only when we want to output the message that we want to show it. So just hide that, and then we'll want to output a message, and that's being done over here within the output. So have the output display and turn it back to block. So save that. And so now if we get any content in there, and font family, in addition we can wrap this with a div and then apply styling to the div as well, and then close the div. So that way we can have some spacing between the errors. So the output and any divs that are within output. So do some margin. So it shows up as the message there. And you can customize this as needed. So we also, once we submit the form and we get a response back, we want to clear the form contents. So just as we loop through all of the form elements, we can clear the contents contained within them. And we'll just create a function in order to handle that. So function clear form. And that's just going to be selecting all of the form elements. And the same way that we loop through each one of these, we're just going to set the value. So take the element with an index value of I and value, and just clear all the values. So run the function. If we're successfully returning back data, then we can clear the form. So that clears out all of the form contents. And the one that we actually don't want to clear out is the when it's got the name of submit. So if element I name is not equal to submit, and if it is, then we want to leave that content. And actually it should be type of submit, because we don't have the So the same way as we did it before, where if the element I attribute type is not equal to submit, then we can clear the value. So that will clear out all the fields. In addition, we're also going to reset the output and display that to none. And within here, when we do submit the form, so display it as block, and then output inner HTML is going to say sending. And then once we submit it and we want to do a display none, we'll just also clear the form here at this point. So once we get a valid email address, send the form, it says sending, and then that will all disappear. So that will actually send the content over to the server side. So whatever the input fields information that we had. And right now from the server, we're just responding back with the same JSON object. So you don't have to actually respond back, or you don't have to output into the console. So it's up to you what you do with the data that's being returned back. So if you just want to do a post, then you don't actually need to wait for the response object. And you can just do a fetch and do a method post to the endpoint. And this way you can create and construct a form that's going to track to the data to a spreadsheet. In addition, it's going to actually send the emails to you from the input form, and you can use this on your websites as well. And of course, style it as needed. Final tasks for this lesson are to try out the application, make sure it's sending the data from the input fields from the form, and that you're able to receive the proper form information within the spreadsheet or just within the email, depending on how you've set it up. Apply the styling to the web form as needed, and also make sure that the user has the proper messaging so that they know what is happening with the form when the data is being sent and the status information.